So here we have the 2020 Mazda CX-8, which is a mid-size 7-seater SUV. Now the CX-8 was only sold in parts of Asia and parts of Oceania, so it's not as popular as, say, the CX-5 or the CX-9. Now the CX-8 does share the same platform as the CX-5, so the front part of the car is the same as the CX-5, but the wheelbase is shared with the larger CX-9 to give you that extra third row in the back. Similar to many cars that were only sold in parts of Asia and Oceania and not to the US, this car is actually slightly narrower than the CX-9, so it's a little bit easier to park in tighter areas and drive down smaller streets. Now this particular car here is actually for sale, so you can buy this from the guys over at GVI here in Auckland. And again, I want to say a big thank you to Hayden and the team at GVI for allowing us to take this car, have some time with it, learn about it, and then hopefully give you guys an informative review. Now the design of the CX-8 is very similar to the rest of Mazda's lineup, and that's a good thing because I do think that their cars are very, very good looking. Their proportions, their creases, from all angles, everything looks really, really good. And I would say that, I can't think of a single person that said a negative thing about the modern designs of Mazda's cars. Unlike other Japanese cars like Toyota and Honda and Nissan, they do make some good cars that look good, but they also make some pretty ugly cars. But with Mazda, all their cars look really, really good. And I also really like their front fascia. It looks very unique to just Mazda, but equally it doesn't look over the top. It's not filled with fake embellishments and vents and things that just make it look silly. I even like the little details of just this part here of the grille and how the grille surround doesn't actually fully complete and how there's a bit of a gap here that leads straight into the headlights. But one thing that I am a bit sad about is that this model, being a lower spec one, does not come with daytime running lights. And I think in 2020, I feel like even the standard version should come with some decent looking daytime running lights. But on the other hand, the headlights still look very nice even when the car's turned off and you don't see any daytime running lights, as opposed to a lot of European cars where their base models that don't come with daytime running lights, they look very empty, and you can see this big fat ugly halogen bulb, and at least on this car it doesn't look as bad. Just like the exterior, Mazda does a great job with their interiors. Their use of materials is great. They've got a sort of faux leather type dashboard here with some stitching. They've got their aluminum or plastic aluminum trim around the air vents. Their switchgear is also nice down here as well. Overall, they do a very, very good job. Now, this model is a lower spec model, and normally I don't recommend people to buy a lower spec model. Buying a lower spec model is kind of like marrying your second best option. Right? Initially, you're like, this is fine, this is good, life is great, and then after you just see the same car that you bought but a better spec one everywhere you drive, and you think, why did I not just buy the better version of this car? But this car, the CX-8 here, does actually come loaded with a pretty good base package. And so this is one car where I would say I actually would be okay recommending this lower spec model here. This lower spec model here comes with keyless entry and keyless start, which surprisingly some of its competitors don't even come with that. It also comes with the larger infotainment screen. It gives you Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You get 3-zone climate control. You get your parking sensors. You get adaptive, all-speed adaptive cruise control, frontal collision detection, lane departure warning. You also get a 360-degree camera, and you also get rear cross-traffic alert. So that is actually pretty flippin' good for a lower spec model. Now, if you do go for a high spec model, you do get certain features like leather seats, which are electric and heated and ventilated. You get second row outboard heated seats. You get a heated steering wheel. You get a powered tailgate. You get a 10-speaker Bose sound system. You get a head-up display, and you also, of course, as I mentioned earlier, you get daytime running lights. So, of course, if you can go for a high spec one, and it's a good price, you will be a bit happy with some of those features. But otherwise, a car like this that's low spec is still really, really good. Now ergonomically, everything here works very, very well. Everything's within easy reach of the driver. Everything is very logically laid out. But I do have two complaints ergonomically about this setup here. And the first one is the placement of the cup holders. If you've got tall cups, your armrest is going to be useless because your hands are going to hit the cups you've got on your cup holders. And my second complaint is that there's actually no forward, next track or previous track button here. The only button that there is on the steering wheel. So as a passenger, if you want to change a song, it's a bit tricky. The only way to do it as a passenger, other than reaching over, of course, onto the steering wheel, is to use the controller knob here. But you've got to go and move the cursor to the next track button and then press down. There's no dedicated button for that. But other than that, everything else here works very nicely. The infotainment user interface is actually really nice, very easy to navigate through. I love the design of it. The fonts and the graphics are very, very good. In fact, it kind of actually reminds me of the Microsoft Zune. And if you don't know what a Zune is, was supposed to be Microsoft's response to Apple's iPod, and obviously it didn't really get anywhere. But anyway, it used a simple sort of text-based menu rather than using icons. And the font actually is exactly the same on here as the Zune as well. The gauge cluster in this car, pretty boring, nothing really to talk about. Yeah, it doesn't do anything amazing. There's no navigation in here, there's no music controls in here, it's just your basic trip computers and that sort of thing in the gauge cluster. In the second row, it's fairly spacious. You've actually got a ton of foot room in the footwell area under the seat. It's huge. Legroom also is fairly good. Of course, you're trading legroom with the person in the third row. If there's none in the third row, you've got heaps of legroom here in the back. Headroom is, of course, very good as well. Very nice that you do have your own dedicated zone here for climate control with your own controls at the back. And of course, if you do get the high spec models, you do get heating in both the outboard seats in the second row. You've got a fair bit of storage in the door cards and your armrest down here with cup holders as well. Now, as you would expect, the third row of any three-row SUV is not going to be particularly comfortable for adults. And I myself here, I'm not actually that tall. I'm only just over 5.5 foot, and yet my head touches the roof. And I've driven in other third-row SUVs, and I've also, even my in-laws, they've got a Honda Odyssey, and I have heaps more headroom in that than I do in this thing here. But I think the other problem with this back row is that there's no air vents. So on a hot day like today, it gets pretty hot. Once you're on the road, of course, aircon's on, you're fine, but just getting in initially, it's not very comfortable. The only other pro of the back seats are the cup holders on the side here, which are fairly large. One thing I've noticed about the CX-8 is just how wide these doors do open, which obviously helps with getting in and out of the vehicle, but it also really helps with installing things like car seats into the second row. I mean, this door's pretty much 90 degrees open, which is great. What's not so great though is getting into the third row. Now this is again a common thing with SUVs with three rows. The third row is never that easy to get into, so it's not only a problem with the CX-8. But one thing I have noticed is that for me, even to get in, to move this seat forward, doesn't go very far forward. So I have to then move the front seat forward, so I can then move the second row forward. So it just depends, if you're doing this a lot, people getting in and out, and the bigger people, hopefully those that are sitting in the third row don't need as much room to get in, to avoid having to move all the seats forward and back. You can get this, of course, with the powered tailgate. This one does not have it, so you have to manually open it. That's fine, we can all do that. And as you can see, with the seats up, this actually has the smallest capacity for cargo volume in the back when the third row is up compared to its competitors. But when you do lower the back seats, it actually now has one of the most amount of cargo space compared to its competitors with the third row down. And of course, if you put the second row down, it's massive. You do also have a lot of good storage underneath here as well. There's quite a lot of space underneath here at the cost of having no space saver. And you've also got little storage areas as well on the side here and over there, and they're pretty decently large as well. And you've also got a lot of tie down points, and you've got little clips here for your grocery bags as well. One of the first things that I noticed was just how responsive the throttle is in this car. You don't have to push very hard, and this thing, it wants to go. And it's quite impressive because it's not it's a pretty heavy car. It's a mid-sized SUV, and the engine isn't massive. It's just a 2.5 litre turbocharged inline 4 engine, so a pretty typical engine you'd find in most cars these days. And there is a sport mode as well, but it's not, I don't like it basically. Like, you're here, it just holds the gears for way too long. It still hasn't upshifted, so, but that's not really an issue because, again, the normal driving mode is perfectly fine. And the ride comfort is pretty good. You know, most mid-sized SUVs are going to be fairly softly sprung, optimized more for comfort than for performance and handling. And of course, having these, bigger profile tires will help with the ride comfort as well. Now, you can get this in a diesel engine as well, and I haven't heard very good things about the diesel engine, so personally I would not recommend getting it. Just seems to have a lot more unreliability issues with it and all of that. So this, oh, there you go, that was the lane departure warning doing its thing. But yeah, so definitely go for the petrol engine. Now, the fuel economy in this is average. I've been getting around town about 9 kilometers per litre, and with more highway driving about 12.5 kilometers per litre. The visibility is fairly good. The only real complaint is that the A pillar on the passenger side is quite large and does block your view somewhat, but it's not too much of a major. You should be moving your head anyway when looking, left and right, so as long as you're doing that, you'll be fine. You do have fairly large wing mirrors as well, which also helps, and of course it does come with the blind spot monitoring system as well. And I find that the general seating position and having my arm rested down here, it's actually a fairly relaxing, easy drive. The steering is quite light. As I mentioned, the drive is fairly smooth. I can control Apple CarPlay here with the controller knob, and I can look out the window in my peripheral vision. I can control it fairly easily. Again, I like how the volume knob button is down here right next to the controller knob as well, so I can easily turn it up and turn it down from here. So, generally cruising around, I've been commuting to work with this and have found it, fairly comfortable. And I'm sure even for, a longer road trip, this would be a really good car to have as well. Now, again, this car is for sale. If you are interested in buying it, you can buy it from the guys at GVI in Auckland and Penrose. So if you are interested in buying it, please do reach out to the guys at GVI in Penrose here in Auckland. It's done about 40,000 Ks, and the condition of it is still really, really good. And also, again, a big thank you to Hayden and the team for allowing us to borrow this car for a while and test it out and hopefully give you guys an informative review. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more cool car content. Thanks again for watching.